Hello and welcome to Insights and Inspirations brought to you by Finally Spoken. I'm Dee and I'm here to bring you a dose of positivity. Today I'm going to share to you a journal entry that I wrote some 3 years back about a conversation that I had with my Lola, my grandmother. The conversation took place when I was about 20 years old and I couldn't recall verbatim, but I know for certain that it started that year. But her explanations regarding the topic were dulled out a year later in little snippets of conversations here and there all throughout the 10 years that has passed since the beginning of that topic. In my desire to keep her lessons close to heart and inculcated deep in my head, I have penned down events and the lessons as best as I could recall it in my journal, which by the way, I haven't shared to anyone up until now. One hot Filipino summer afternoon, there was a brownout. So mind you, we live in the province, so there's a cyclical scheduled brownout when the falls that supplies electricity to the rest of the province will dry out. So we need to ration the electricity. It was during that time. So in order to salvage the ice that I made for myself and to relieve myself the heat that's when I made calamansi juice. As I had just enough of reading Scarlet by Nathaniel Hawthorne, I laid the book on the coffee table inside the house and headed straight to the terrace, which was in front of my grandmother's house. I was sipping my calamansi juice, looking out on the expanse of the open road, counting the buses that had passed, not minding the dust that would settle as they zoomed one and then another in front of the house. I heard the screeching of the old door, the bedroom door of my grandmother, and out comes my Lola fanning herself with an old Chinese calendar. I placed my glass on the table and gestured that I would help her, but instead she waved her hand, turned her head side to side, smiled at me, and said that she can manage. My grandmother at that time was 82. She was healthy and barely with ails. As I looked at her, I wondered, will I ever reach such golden years? And before the thought escaped me, I asked my 82-year-old grandma, what is the secret to a long and happy life? She turned to me, parted her graying hair in the middle, gestured that I sit down beside her. And as I did, she told me that the secret is no secret at all. And it's always been there. She said that she could sum it up in one word, content. And she said it with certainty and authority in her voice. My dream-driven, goal-oriented young self was taken aback, and I uttered, content? Seriously? She said, yes, exactly. With my brow furrowed, I asked, how so? Now the following reasons as to why content is the secret to living a long and happy life are explanations that have been dulled out all throughout the years, as every now and then I would interject this conversation each time we see each other. Because if you're talking to an 82-year-old woman, you don't actually finish one whole conversation at one sitting. There's always something that's going to bother her, or at least that's true for my Lola, because she'd always say, okay, now I'm tired, I have to go take a nap. Okay, now I have to go to the bathroom. So it never finishes. So the answer to the question, why is content the secret to a long and happy life? The answers have been dulled out all through these years. And this is what she said. Content means content in eating. It would mean you don't have to be a glutton. You'd eat what your stomach can handle. You'd be satisfied with the food that's in your table, so which means your satiety level would be satisfied easily. And the food you'd eat would not only nourish your body, but also your soul, keeping you healthy in its entirety. Content in possessions. If you're content with your possessions, you'd be swayed away from envy. And envy, my child, is a demon that would eat you up and cut through your life's precious moments. Right before you could appreciate what's in front of you, you would lose it because you were continually looking at your neighbor's things or your neighbor's successes. You see, if you have content in possessions, you'll never have to constantly look over your shoulder or to constantly check what your neighbor has. You would value things more, and it will last longer. You will not be caught on chasing the next big thing. Content, my child, is good for the soul and good for the environment. Content would also mean content in the pursuit of your dream. And by that, it means that you would never settle for what is there. It's the fact that after you try your best, but you know your limitations, instead of looking at it as obstacles, if you're content, you'd know that whatever you would face is simply a redirection to a much better place. Content in your finances. Now this one, I was so baffled because how will you, if you ever are content with your finances just as is, then you would barely be left with like less than enough, right? But this is what Lola said. Content with your finances. If you're content, you'd know that money is important, but you'll never let it run your life. You'd be a master of the money and not the other way around. You would not be caught in bad debt because you know how to master it. You'll be content to spend it on your needs rather than wants, and it will always be enough. Content in your relations. Nowadays, you kids have plenty of people to compare to, and I thank God I was born earlier. It's hard to not be tempted to compare to anyone. I will tell you this, if you have content in your relations, you're least likely to find faults in them and instead understand them. You'd bridge gaps instead of build walls. You'd understand that even if you have faults, it's something that both of you can work on. Content would also bring forth an understanding of when it's best to let go. Content with oneself. Again, there are so many things that would distract you from appreciating yourself. There's always someone better than you, but if you're content with yourself and what you have to offer, it's easier to love your own and accept the love of others as well. Content with your relationship with God. Be contented with your relationship with your Maker. Always make sure that you have one to begin with. You know what? Content springs from the belief that His grace is always sufficient. My child, look for content in yourself. It's already there. Just practice it more. And then after that, after most of those conversations, she would gesture that she would take a nap. My precious Lola, as of recording December 11, 2021, is 92 years old, 8 years short of 100. So, that's a century worth of knowledge. And even if at times her memory fails her, there's still those snippets of conversation that are worth more than gold. And she always had the little lessons to share here and there. And I know that Not a lot of us have been blessed with a grandparent in our formative years, and more so in our adult life. The wisdom of the elderly is indeed a precious gem, and this is why I'm sharing it to the world. I am Dee, a proud granddaughter, and that's your dose of positivity.